Hey, all right. Okay, but now we have,
Yeah, probably close that one. It was fine.
how about now?
No echo.
Uh, Barbara is asking, okay,
We'll go ahead and get started. So, good afternoon and welcome to the February 26th workshop for the Board of Harbor Commissioners for Portland Harbor. Master, if you can call the roll.
Commissioner Carter?
Here.
Commissioner Von Vogt? Here. Commissioner Cummings? Here. Commissioner Henshaw? Commissioner Wilson? And both segments may be absent.
Okay. Jumping into our first item of business, which is discussion of the draft budget for FY 26-27. So just before we start, I want to, just as a reminder, when talking about the budget, we are talking about the positions, not individuals, just as a reminder to everyone. And with that, let's go ahead and jump in. So I know that the harbor master worked with their staff and the treasurer and chair to come up with a budget for next year. And it looks like it's jumping to sort of the difference between total expenses and revenue. There's a difference of about 34,000, if I'm looking correctly. And with that, Master, do you want to sort of walk through some of the changes you're proposing?
Sure. So with the city appropriations, we applied a 2.8% similar cost of living increase for 2026. So that brought up that amount to 185 and change. So basically up from 5,000 last year. The other notable ones was we applied the 2.8% to the mooring fees and the slip fees. And that's so that we don't do a large increase down the road. It's more of a gradual increase almost every year. It's, people tend to get sticker shock when you hit them with a big fee down the road to make up for the staff salaries and wages, we've always gone up just based on the duties that staff is doing. The office manager, we'd like to propose to take on more, and she already has been taking on more responsibility with the budget, the financials. That has seemed to be helpful in my short time. I would look for the treasurer to see if that's the appropriate way you want to continue to go.
He's doing a great job.
Part-time salaries, we've gone up. That was $25 an hour times 30 hours a week average. That's what gets us to that 39. Yes. No, this is the part-time employee that we have here with us. The seasonal salaries, proposing going up. That's the next one up, 20,000. And that was a recommendation to bring their salary up to $22 an hour. The seasonal. Part-time is happy, yeah. Part-time year round, and then the seasonals are, but for, another notable increase is uniforms. So I'd like to be more consistent. I know that folks do have shirts that they wear, but I would like to see the embroidered shirts and matching pants. I just think it provides a better optics when people recognize everyone wearing the same thing. And of course, anytime you buy something with public safety, the price is always expensive. So kind of why that cost is up so much. And we also have 5 deputies. The other major contributing factor here is the healthcare. So we have myself, who is actively going to enroll in the healthcare plan. We have another full-time employee who is likely not going to participate, but it'd be important for the board to have that money in the event there was a life-changing event and that employee would need to be on healthcare. And then there also is the part-time employee that would, I believe, be eligible. We think based on the current full-time employees mentioned that they're not going to go in the healthcare plan now, would be fine to. We didn't include the part-time employees additional coverage in this. For the budget, is what I'm saying. Yeah, because we anticipate that the other full-time employee won't. So that can only be reevaluated down the road if those employees do. Correct. So that was kind of a big one there for the big increase.
We're covering 100% of the employee.
Yeah.
Of the full-time. Full-time, right, yeah, of the employee cost, but not at any time. The provision for year-round part-time is 50%, I remember.
I believe that's what it was.
They try to pull the document now, but I believe so. So
the maintenance and operation, we're still proposing 10,000. We've gone down to 10,000 from 15 for 2 grand boats. But like anything, when things break on boat, they break hard and expensive. So we just didn't want to cut ourselves short with that. The fuel. So for example, the Lyman Morse boat, every time we fill up, it's just shy of $400. It's expensive. And how long is that? So during the month of January, we only filled up once, but for example, we're not doing a whole lot. You know, Hattie might be going out from here to the CAD cell or just down to a few ports to check on some dredging things, but we're not doing patrols necessarily. So I think the fill-ups will add up quick. You know, and again, I think we can be smart with what boat we use for which. You know, like the Lyman Morse boat could be a harbor boat for the presence, and the Riprap could be the boat that has to rip out to the islands. Certainly will spend less money if fuel do that. And it will all just depend on who's working and what kind of emergency call comes in.
So, yeah, that's the one that I was gonna call out of, that was the money that is supposed to be set aside for the future replacement. Again, not saying if we miss a year, it is the end of the world, but the math that went into that was assuming, I think we were only getting to a 25% match, and that was after like 15, 20 years of it in service. So we do also have, just for the transparency of it, because we have the new assets now, we do have the two older boats that we could look at selling and having that to offset some of the difference.
Well, we had two new boats and we paid 12%. 12% came out of our budget of one of them.
Right, but the previous commissions had never documented and set aside money for the replacement, so,
They calculated around depreciation, full depreciation, like tax,
I calculated it based off of assuming, and I can pull up the actual math, but my recollection when I did it last year was it was based off of assuming a 3% annual cost of living increase, determining the end goal, end price in 20 years, assuming that we get a granted gain and we're only responsible for 25% of that, and then divided that over the 20 years. So it's not perfect. But yeah, a lot of the, to your point of depreciation, that's a lot more in the first few years, and I try to be kind to our budget and sort of itemize it over.
smooth around.
Correct.
Vehicle, just due to its age and the unknown, we increased it to $502,000 for payments. Fuel, I have it to 3,000 because we're already over that 1,500. I think we're over 2,000. So just preparing for the worst. Of course, we'd like to see those gas prices going down, but
Well, we should get that down to zero.
And the vehicle replacement fund, again, this is my first year with this, so I don't know where the board stands with replacement, but we just put it 5,000 placeholder.
Yeah. So I definitely understand that this is a transition year with our new assets and the existing assets, and hopefully that we won't use all of sort of that maintenance of fuel, but until we have it, we can kind of know how everything goes. Or you understand where that's coming from. I'm always hesitant to do what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it, and I think we can get away with it for this year anyway. Of looking at just the file that I have of, it looked like in our 2023 survey, the two assets that we had a value of about 50 grand-ish. We're I have a shortfall of about 30, which again could potentially be less given we're being a little bit conservative with the health benefits of probably about, I'm gonna do rough math and my brain's not working, about 9 grand higher than we're going to necessarily spend. hoping that we can save some money on the fuel. Our insurance should hopefully go down if we take 2 assets off of the book. So I think we're probably closer to the rough numbers in my head, probably a 20 grand difference, and then we don't have our 20 grand that we would be putting in for asset funds. So I think that we can look at those and get a year based off of selling the asset would be comfortable for this year. Now that being said, I do also want to point out that we were talking about potentially replacing the float, which would cost us about 12.5 grand. No. That doesn't seem right. Would cost us some money.
Don't ship rings.
So that's the one that we're still negotiating with the DOT, but they were going to pay for, we were going to have the shipwreck for 50%. The DOT was going to pay, or was going to install their float, or pay to have their float. And then we would pay our, 25%. So, 12.5, that's on those last payments.
Right, for that.
That's the line item I was looking at on the last page, but those numbers don't seem.
Staff didn't touch that, those pages. But
Okay.
Figured the board had your own attention.
No, I think that float cost was from, was the idea of replacing the float last year, and I think that was a preliminary number, not necessarily a real number. Yeah, so I see it was under last year's budget, not this year's. So, again, I guess I'm looking at it, I'm not seeing a whole lot of spots that we can, or in good conscience should really be cutting, and I think we can get through a year. But that means that we might be needing to look at how to make up for selling the asset in future years of what that would look like on the other side. Two older folks.
The other semi-major is 5 grand, that I had to go up on was computer software, and that goes back to the thing I keep bringing up every meeting, which is the CAD, the computer dispatch system. The city, it just seems like we're at a standstill. They're kind of set fast on waiting until they get a new CAD system to build outside of the agency. So, yeah,
Fine.
yes, computer assisted dispatch. The alternative here is we will, if we can fund it, we can still have our services through Cumberland County Dispatch Center. There's some perks to that. You know, they have a direct line of communication with the Coast Guard. They've done a lot of trainings, and anytime something happens in Casco Bay, Cumberland County gets notified immediately because of the emergency management aspect of it. So there are some benefits to going with them, but again, ultimately I think we should work towards being under the cities. I just think, you know, the fireboat right here, the police department's getting a vote likely. So if everyone could be on the same communication page, that's. But unfortunately, so this is kind of where we're at. It's just, we got the budget from the director who said that the $5,000 is started up for us. They have to build us as an agency. And then just to maintain those licenses every year, it'd be, 4,000 every other.
That software runs on the top books, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so, okay, finally found it. The proposal for the uh, float budget was 150, and if the state would pay 75%, our share would be 37.
37K?
Yep.
This is for the new doc.
That was full. Yes, not having the harbor pilot fee that we had to charge. From the two cities? Yeah, they gave us 90, yeah, I believe it was 90 each this year, and we'd be adding the 2.8% COLA onto that, which would be, call it 92,500, round number.
So in the past, there was a contribution, there was some sort of contribution for legal services.
So, yes, you are right, that used to be a separate line item, when, I forget what year I first did it, but when I became treasurer, yeah, and the discussion, or the idea was to, we rolled it into one lump sum from the city. So the cities aren't giving us less, so we rolled it into one lump sum so that it is now in our pocket, and then we can use it as we see fit rather than.
So it's in the 90s.
Correct. Rather than having it as a separate line item, because then you didn't want to track it as it only pays for legal.
No, that makes perfect sense. It just seemed to me like there was, in the past, before my time, and maybe 4 years, there was something came from the cities for legal over and above, or was it?
It was less. So the city paid less for our appropriations, and then they had a separate legal. And what would, again, I'll acknowledge I'm the one that did it, so I will completely own that. But it got rolled into just one document instead of having it be a separate appropriation. But it's all in there.
The 2025 budget was 220,000, that's wishful thinking.
It was wishful thinking, and the city plus heavily quite heavily on that one.
So it seems to me,
Yeah, so I found it, so the FY 23-24 request, just for your the information, it was 52,000 from the city, and with a 10,000 legal counsel retainer. So we rolled it all together and made it just one half, and then that way, once it's in our pool, we can use it as we see.
yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I just thought the overall total was higher.
If we have a lot of that stuff out here, nothing, not far.
Now, again, that's where if we want to, and again, I actually think it might be prudent in this case of pushing it off a year so that we can look at actual, now that we have the new boat and a new harbor master, and let us get a year of our feet wet and make up that difference with the selling of the assets would be my proposal for this year.
We're 27, yeah.
For, yeah, FY 27, and then I agree with you, FY 28, we can't keep pushing the envelope too far. But I think that gives us a year to really look at this. We'll have a new accounting service, that they'll be able to give, we'll have much better information. We'll have a year with the new assets, so we'll have a better information of what that actually is using for fuel and what that really looks like. We'll have a year with the new harbor master so that we can see what our needs actually are during the entire season versus a lot of this is off of information of what we had done in the past. So
I think we'll also be looking at perhaps a higher level of service. I mean, there was some dissatisfaction at the level of service, I think. That with a higher level of service, the cities may be more amenable to contributing more, even though I know they're both fiscal big.
right, I know one of the big things with the city, again, having gone through, when I went to them with the 22,000 or 2020 ask was that they weren't happy with, they weren't really seeing what we were doing, and then on top of that, they thought that we weren't asking enough for the end users. We have increased our ask to the end users. I think we'll have a much better visibility of what we're doing. So I do think now have an opportunity for us to look at it in the future and say, we do think we need a little bit more from you. And again, also, maybe when you look at, we need more from the mooring fees and again, the slip fees, I know that we were very direct on who we were charging those to, but I think if I remember correctly, legal counsel said we could take a broader approach on those, and maybe that's something we have to look at as well. I don't know if we can do that, but I know what, again, we said specifically people making money on it, so, but other slips in theory could be charged the same thing of, just like we charge somebody a mooring fee every year, if you have your own personal slip, I believe we could be charging them as well, which I'm not saying how much money that could be. I'm not even necessarily recommending it, but saying, I agree with you. I think that'll be something, and I think if we know that's coming, probably the prudent thing is not during the summer, because I know all the marinas and everyone are busy during the summer, but maybe we start having workshops to talk about that in the fall, so that we can sort of get in front of it and have some of those conversations rather than doing it.
Right. The only contribution the marinas actually make to our operating budget is boat fees.
Correct.
Although they're a significant consumer of our services, which they weren't getting, but they may be getting moving forward.
I think it's more than, oh, I don't know, pretty far. One thing that we heard, I think, but
The other thing is a more scientific study of our mooring fee rates. My recollection is that we raised them, but we were really out of step with a lot of harbors. And you may know this better, but I mean, it would be good sometime for us to look at where we are vis-a-vis Falmouth, Yarmouth.
You're pretty low in the scheme of things.
Yes, well, that's what I'm trying to say in a nice way.
Just as someone who's collected information from the main harbor master association, Portland is pretty low in the scheme of things.
So that would be another revenue area that we could look at. And the other thing that argument or case that can be made to the cities is that the dredging has been a monumental effort in terms of staff time, what has to happen. We're getting some reimbursement for that. And that's in this budget. There's a deduct of 20. We didn't treat it as revenue, but it's a deduct. So I consider it a revenue. It's 20 grand. That will disappear after this next dredging season. But we could say, you know, one reason our costs are up is that we're doing both what we've always done, but the dredging also required a lot more work. And hopefully people would feel like they got their money. I envision conceivably we could actually have the marine, have the users be more of an advocate for us if we did a better job. I mean, the marinas also, I think, are not, they're not paying their fair share relative to everyone else with the services. I mean, they're gonna say they pay property taxes to the city, but, at some point, I think, that would be a source of revenue that I would want to look at, but I wouldn't want to do it until we get a better job. 'Cause I found, you know, like I talked to a couple marina owners that I know about the slip fees, and they thought it was chump change. You know? I mean, they bitched about it, but they really, really thought it wasn't a lot of money. I don't know.
Plan. Yeah, I know that's not it.
Don't worry about your own book.
I think we're in the hundreds, the quote I got.
Do it really well. And what we, so that's the, you know, that to me is a big opportunity, especially with you coming on. The timing is now for us to do that.
And another chip for the cities is we have two new vessels that are high quality that didn't cost them anything. I mean, we collectively wrote the grants and secured the funds. They're beneficiaries.
So I met with the sustainability director and the waterfront coordinator recently, the new waterfront
The new
coordinator
one?
in City of Portland. And I was talking exactly that about how the park start putting this in the city's minds of a long-term waterfront management. And what I learned was something really exciting was the city of Portland's already starting their from the sustainability aspect, they're calling it the waterfront inventory, but it's not. Well, I'll get to that part. The part that they're doing is like the type of landscape between Portland and South Portland and runoff and whatnot. They're going to put all that into a GIS system. Then talking with the waterfront coordinator, there's another tool that we can use, both he and her, through the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association, that can take an inventory of the waterfront stuff, boats, wharfs, everything that goes into the waterfront here in Portland and South Portland. Once we have that data, then we can go to a consultant and say, we already have this amount of data to provide for the management plan. What's your quote now that we have this, and how can we integrate that into this plan? So I think I agree with you. It's always nice to just start maybe throwing some money into a capital plan, but I think we're on a good track. I think the city was really excited to hear that this board is considering a management plan long term, and that there's also staff who's interested in helping. And I relayed that as well. We are happy to assist both cities. You know,
Well,
So-
it's already. Some of it. They're cool. Portland. They do max out.
Yeah.
But I think they max out at like 135. But if we could take a chunk of that and use it to quarterback more or less, we'll bring all of those things. Pulling it. Man. You have to angle that towards sustainability, but a lot of what we
I
do.
think it is.
Yeah.
I do. I would say it does completely fall.
So, the opening of March this year. Cool about it. And encourage them. But for the following year, we might be able to apply for those grants, get a portion of their fees.
So just off of what I'm hearing, do we want to raise our ask to the city? I'm hearing that there's a decent level of logic behind it. We have the dredging, which is taking up a whole lot more time. We're doing a lot more resource outreach, working with them, trying to be part of these projects and really trying to help drive the future for both of them. I also think that even the CAD, that's $5,000, that is us trying to be more of a community partner here. And again, a little bit selfishly, City of Portland and South Portland already are paying into that. So in theory, if they don't want to be paying us for that, if we get involved with local and they can help break that dam, I think that would be a pretty good way to do it as well. So I'm hearing, based off of what I'm hearing, it might, I know that, again, I did the ask a couple of years ago, but since then, the biggest complaint was that we didn't charge enough to the end user. We doing the quick math, raised the fees to the end user is about 50, 60 grand in that time. It might be worth going to the cities and making an ask to say, okay,
I think we've got all of
And we'll look to do it again, too. We'll do it. I would talk to you, you think Mark would be supportive of something like this?
100%. Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
I think, what you were,
we did. He's a reasonable guy. The council is, but I think that we're progressively in a better position to look at the revenue side. It's hard to look at it when we weren't running out with some smoldering dissatisfaction. But I think we could find eventually that we have advocates in our customer base. So, we know how the city also has a cruise ship that the state and the pier operation. But is that funded? Is that self-funded, or is there an appropriation that goes to that?
I think there has to be, just looking at the fees that are charged for my time down at the other
Mhm.
end, I don't think it covers itself completely, but, so I think they get some money from the
I'm just
city.
curious if, if they're asking for an increase, we could piggyback, have a comparable one. Do you know the folks at the cruise, I don't have a right.
I met Tony Doucette.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I met with her. Yeah, I mean, I kind of just asked, what does the city expect from the harbor master's office when cruise ships come in? And in her mind, I mean, I'm not trying to put her on the spot. I'm not sure she's already
Yeah,
saying, but ideally, the harbor master office would help escort ships in and out and
Yeah.
safe navigation around them.
Keep people away from them.
Right. That was kind of what
If
she
they're
thought.
not.
Yeah.
But
Which, again, I know that we talked about it when it happened, but with the new dock behind Ocean Gateway, that might become a larger thing as we progress.
so this year, maybe we should at least test the waters with the cities and just say the dredging is.
Yeah, I wouldn't look to break the bank, but maybe just round it out to 200, do 100, ask for 100 from each.
And just say, we've recovered some money, we're holding the permit for the dredging and we're staffing it indirectly. And we're staffing it with commissioners, we have commissioners, but I'm pretty sure Bill Needleman, who was like an alumni, would have supported it, if we'd asked. I'd be,
So I had a conversation with Troy.
It's been great. I mean, it's obviously it was only a 45-minute meet and greet, but I think he's very excited to hear. And I was trying to make it very clear. I recognize that we're all three different agencies, both cities and us, but I would be more than happy. I think the board would approve that any way we can collaborate is the best way to move forward.
We've had on and off good working with it, but it could be better. I mean, we've done things that have not made them happy. Not us.
Like I told Troy, if there's a project where you need to get on the water and get visual on something,
Yeah.
schedule with us, and we can take you out for a half hour, and get it'd be no problem.
Does the waterfront director report to the head of economic development?
So that's
Greg?
I know Greg.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm just curious because Greg's my neighbor, so I interact with him.
Okay.
I
regularly.
believe she might. Yeah, I believe she might.
Yeah.
report.
Yeah, I think Bill used to,
Yeah,
I don't know, I would have imagined they would have kept the same structure.
yeah, because I think he would also be sort of would be supportive if we made a good case for it. The dredging is given us a high profile, and it's kind of an ongoing circus, I guess, right? Just moving stuff around.
Patty's been going all hours of the day and night getting stuff moved. So yeah, the cities have gotten their money's worth out of that.
So, okay, so just to put a cap in it, because I'm happy to keep talking, but we're approaching an hour on this one. Sounds like we're in agreement that the expenses are what the expenses are. And then it sounds like we're talking about raising the appropriation to 200 and then looking at some more increases, but for FY28, you make up the difference. But otherwise, moving forward with the budget.
Well, I don't know if it'd be appropriate to put in here, but in the expenses, I don't know if there's a way to say it, but where we have the possibility of some grants, so maybe not in expenses, maybe where we approach the cities around, put it in our budget. I know Mayor Dunham would like to see it in that we're planning for a plan, so to speak, that we're trying to find resources. I don't think it has to throw our budget out of whack. I think we can say, projected grant applications, et cetera, but to have it somewhere in here.
Yeah, kind of like right now where the accounts
Yeah,
payable, and that would be like,
100%.
throw it down at the bottom,
Yeah.
throw in like the, float replacement down there, throw in the
Exactly.
DOT grant to go along with it, and then like throw in the line item for, resiliency planning, and then, yeah, see, put underneath it some grants that we might be going for, do you look at that type thing?
And I think also just above and beyond the cities, that perhaps John and some of us could also talk to NDOT and see if there was a possibility, a revenue source there. We have a good working relationship with them, and, yeah, but, I mean, I think they appreciate us more now.
Alright, yeah, because again, I know with the cruise ships and the Port Authority down here, they're as invested as anybody else in making sure that we have a plan and keep everything moving in the right direction. So,
So I think there's a way that we can at least take very good shape. I think putting it out there that that's a goal of ours, more or less, in the budget, and political support, financial support. Yeah,
They're,
that's the main office of community affairs, MOCA, of community plans.
DMR has, I think, the harbor man, or harbor planning grants, they're small amounts, but there are small amounts we can pull from.
yeah. No, that's a good idea. But we're in agreement on the approach.
I believe we are, yeah. Now I say I believe we are, could you write down that so that you can update? it?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And then, so moving on to the next item of business, discussion of handling of the slip fees. So we have a couple of marinas that have done partial or haven't paid the slip fees yet. So have been talking to legal counsel, regarding these. They have sent us, they're working on drafting some letters to send on our behalf, regarding these but just to give a quick overview, so our rules and statute does allow the commission to go to the district court to enforce any fees that we have, and that includes the awarding of penalties and fees, including any legal fees associated with collecting of income. So we have that collection item in there. When we passed the rule originally, we did not pass any rules on initial penalties. That's something that we might want to look at in the, not saying do it for this year's collection, but looking at next year, having it in place to say, because no one really wants to go to district court to fight over this, have it there as sort of a incentive to make sure that people are paying in time. Similar, I know we have something similarly in place for the mooring fees right now that I'm going to get the dates wrong, so please correct me if I'm off too much, but if you do it after March 1st, there's an additional fee, double?
March 15th.
March 15th.
Yeah, I don't seeing what the exact amount is, but yeah.
But, so we have something already kind of in place for the moorings. Legal counsel was going to see if there's a standard penalty that exists for municipalities for this sort of thing, and do that. But essentially, not looking for any action right now, but something that we'll want to consider and look at making I know we have our rule change coming up, looking to roll that into it to include sort of that late penalty or partial payment thing into that in the future.
We're still working with these folks, or is it an impasse?
No, we've sent, I've had Barbara send a couple reminders. Not sure what the case is. It seemed like they were all on board at first, and now I don't know, it goes on the back burner and they forget about it, but there's no incentive to submit it quote unquote on time or in a
Right.
timely fashion.
No, I know.
Which, again, we're talking 2 out of the mini marina, so
Yeah.
I do want to at least put out there a thank you to the rest of the marinas that have paid and have done the correct thing. We do appreciate that, and
Just wasn't surprised. There's only 2 of us.
right, so again, no actions needed right now. Legal counsel is writing a letter. To be honest, I have it in my inbox and I need to read it and see. But we'll hopefully be getting those out shortly and hopefully get that behind us. But yeah, but again, mostly as we're looking at our rules and doing it, looking at putting it in there to memorialize, again, so the mooring I know that we have, or we do already, putting in there to memorialize also anything for the slip fees or anything like that that are also outstanding. We need something like another chat.
Barbara says 50. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Let me just leave that.
Which probably at one point was us doubling it, and it isn't anymore.
What were you calling it for the motor?
That's all I had on that item. If there's any questions or discussion that would like to have on that one, happy to have it. But otherwise, we can go ahead and move on to the harbor master report.
You want to talk about the main
Oh.
municipal
Yes, we probably should talk about that.
in the context of the budget?
Yeah.
So I got a email from Debbie Bridges, who's been handling our communication for the healthcare plan. And she had just asked, basically, well, in the scheme of things, some municipalities offer an incentive to employees who don't use the healthcare plan. And just want to put that on your radar if that's something this board wants to entertain. It's basically a stipend for folks because then it's less money the board has to spend on a full healthcare plan. So she just sent that reminder of some municipalities do this, and you guys consider that you want to move forward.
And do we have to do anything? Did she need a letter from us?
That I wasn't clear. I didn't reach back out because she's waiting on a letter from me as well, personally, for the healthcare. So I can find that out. I guess the first step was to find out how the board.
So I'll acknowledge I haven't kept up with all the healthcare laws. Do we have to because I believe at one point, if we offered the stipend in lieu of, we had to have some sort of record of that they had insurance elsewhere. We know that that's still a requirement.
We don't know, probably. I don't. I mean, it's something we're in a tough budget year, so it's hard to entertain it. On the other hand, it may, as the year goes on, if someone is not taking it and we build up a surplus there, we could start to consider something along those lines. It would be hard to add anything to the expense side of the budget, but we could perhaps consider a way to do that as we get closer maybe to the fiscal year. It partly depends on what you think, and be open to hearing your thoughts.
I see both sides. I mean, I think the budget's tight. But I mean, it definitely is certainly, just from my experience, it is certainly something that a lot of municipalities do. I know this is a quasi-municipal agency. Not to be political, I would leave it to the board to think what you think is best. I mean, I get it, the budget's tight. Tight. We do have some recommended increases for staff, which may alleviate some of those concerns for this year. But again, we always reevaluate
Is it something we can reevaluate as we get into as we get closer to the fiscal year and we get a better sense of where we are, or as we get into the fiscal year?
I assume you can amend your policy for the plan halfway through a season if you wanted to.
Bigger. Not sure. Well, what's up with
Yeah, so I guess I would kind of put it back at this point of saying, follow up, just confirm we can change it later. I believe normally after we have the budget, we're going to have to do a look at the employee handbook, see if that needs an update. I don't think we're changing any policies this year, so it should hopefully not. But we could look at doing that as part of that.
And we could
update.
do some research on what's typical.
Yeah, that's the other one of what does the city, what do other municipalities
Another
offer?
harbor organizations they have. But also small groups. I mean, I'd be happy to, I've worked with a number of, like Acadia Benefits and other old consulting clients of mine. I'd be happy to get some thoughts on that from some folks in that line of work.
Right, because yeah, I don't know, without knowing what numbers we're talking about, like if it's like $100 a month, then it's not that big of a thing, or is it half of what we would be, half to 3/4 of what we would be paying, and it's a much bigger item. So, yeah, I think it's up for a thing for future discussion. I agree the budget's tight and don't really see a way to slot it in quite yet, but
But it's on
No,
the
it-
radar.
right, and knowing what the number would be, I think would make a big difference on that feasibility of slotting it in. So then, again, just look, thinking back to our policy now of, okay, the full part-time person, you pay 50%, or we cover 50%. If they don't do it, do we give them 50% of the stipend would become the next question, which I think we start going down a rabbit hole that gets gray pretty quick.
Yeah, I can ask those questions.
It'd be interesting to know,
Yeah.
like the Harbor Masters Association, do They probably don't know.
No, because this is, so, as
This
you
is
guys know,
more-
this agency is so unique, right?
Right.
It's only one statute. Most harbor masters either fall for
Under the
municipal
state.
or their, police department, which falls under their municipal program. All right, I'll ask those questions and see if I can get. At least for the specific questions.
I'll ask around in the private sector and see if there's any consistent policies or data.
Sure.
We kind of derailed that.
I didn't mean to derail. You'll be honest.
I don't know if Patty is on, I can't tell. But if she's not, so the dredge is still going, they've applied to go to the end of March, it was supposed to be middle of March. But it's just, make sure they get everything done they want to get done this year, they're gonna, go to the end of the month, which will likely happen with the permitting. Patty's been out straight, dealing with, personalities and floats and boats, and, she's done a really good job though at communicating and, making sure everything's getting moved and making sure Proc can get in there and do what they need to do.
That's right on timeline.
It is, yeah. They've had a handful of shutdowns due to equipment failures and cold and the ice, and, a few storms we've had in some operations. They've done good jobs in other areas to make up for it. So they've been really flexible to shift their timeline around to a different, supply if they needed to. Not a whole lot other than, we got the boat's first 100-hour service done. That was exciting. Yep. So we got that going. And next week we have the Maine Harbor Master Association conference. So a handful of staff are going up to that. It's being held in at UMaine this year. Switch venues from the Maritime to UMaine. So the office will be closed to walk-ins on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, because the other half of staff is going to the Fisherman Forum. But we will make sure that, phone calls will be answered, emails will be answered, so all that's going to happen. And we'll put on social media that this office is closed. But yeah, just getting ready for the season. As Glenn mentioned earlier, we are doing slowly. I'm doing outreach to the marinas. Haven't had an official sit down with everybody here, but slowly meeting them one-on-one and the dock owners and just trying to get my piece out. And the only other big thing on the books coming up in the month is a full staff meeting. So I haven't even met all the deputies yet. I'm season. So we're gonna have a big full-blown staff meeting here, and we'll kind of share what everyone's expectations are of each other and start planning for the season.
Ready, organized, ready for action.
We've done some organizing, yes. Yeah, the three of us here do better with less clutter. So sort that out.
I'll check in with Barbara. We've gotten some money from reimbursement for the dredging. Let's see what we got with that.
Coming up on the bridge.
I think I've heard from Patty, everything's been surprisingly, quote unquote, surprisingly clean. It's been good.
I've heard that also from folks that it's been much cleaner than they expected.
The EPA has been very satisfied when they go out doing their sampling with Patty. And also the turbidity, they're not seeing, they thought they'd see a lot more turbidity coming out when they do their dumps, and they're not seeing that. So I think everyone is pleasantly surprised how smooth stuff is. Not a lot of work. They've done a lot of work though, so we'll give them,
Commissioner, comment?
So all we're doing,
Perfect. And with that, I will adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
is there any sort of Department of Ed?
Yeah. We'll see who the next